if all the information in the universe, like every possibility, every single thought, every ultimate truth, if all of that already exists out there in some perfect, eternal archive, what is the actual point of living a physical life?
Right. Why bother with the struggle?
Exactly. Why deal with the stub toes or the heartbreak, the endless traffic jams, and just the absolute friction of daily existence if the universe already knows everything?
That is really the defining question we are tackling today. We're looking at this incredibly ambitious stack of philosophical notes provided to us by a listener, and it details 3 evolving versions of a conceptual framework the author calls the architecture of awareness.
Yeah, and it's quite a title.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are exploring an attempt to build a unified model here, one that bridges established quantum physics, ancient metaphysical traditions, modern information theory, and even classical monotheistic theology.
I want to be incredibly clear right up front about our mission today and, the nature of the source material for this deep dive.
It's definitely a good idea.
Because we are starting with hard established science, but the framework very deliberately leaps into speculative philosophy.
Yeah, it's not a lab report.
Right. It isn't a scientific paper claiming to have, isolated the human soul in a petri dish. It is a conceptual map. It's asking this massive what if,
Yeah.
What if we took what we know about the foundational physics of the universe and applied those exact same systemic rules to the mind, to meaning, and to existence itself?
Which is a huge leap.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the ultimate purpose of life in this framework, we have to start at the absolute bottom layer of physical reality.
Down to the building blocks.
Exactly. We have to start with mass, and specifically the Higgs field.
Setting the foundation with the Higgs field is it's a brilliant structural choice by the author. It takes a piece of Nobel Prize-winning physics and uses it to completely shatter how we intuitively think about reality.
Because most of us just walk around assuming that the fundamental properties of the universe are inherent, right? Like a rock is heavy because a rock is just heavy.
Right, we think it's just built into the object.
Yeah, we tend to think of mass as just the amount of stuff crammed into an object. We equate it to weight.
Even though we know, from high school physics, that weight changes depending on gravity.
Exactly. You go to the moon, you weigh less, but your mass, your intrinsic resistance to being moved, your inertia, that remains exactly the same.
And the source material uses this classic shopping cart analogy, which I love.
It's so helpful. Pushing an empty cart across a parking lot is easy, right? It accelerates instantly.
Right.
But fill that exact same cart with bags of concrete, and suddenly it demands this massive effort to accelerate, even though the gravity hasn't changed at all. It has more resistance to a change in its motion.
And for generations, physicists believed that this resistance, this mass, was just a permanent tag attached to a particle.
Well, it was born with it.
Yeah, like an electron was simply born with a specific mass, almost like a microscopic billiard ball. But the discovery of the Higgs field proved that mass is not an inherent property at all. The Higgs field is a quantum field that permeates the entire universe continuously.
We need to distinguish this from the kinds of fields we interact with daily. Because if I hold up a magnet, the magnetic field is localized.
Yeah, it has boundaries, yeah.
Right, gets weaker the further away I pull my hand.
The Higgs field doesn't operate like that at all. It has no boundaries. It is an omnipresent, invisible ocean, and every single particle in the cosmos is constantly swimming through it.
Which is just a wild image.
It is.
Yeah.
And the absolute mind bender here is that particles themselves are fundamentally massless.
Really, fundamentally massless.
Yes. They only acquire the property of mass based on how they interact with this omnipresent ocean.
So if a particle interacts strongly with the field, it experiences tremendous drag, like trying to sprint through waist-deep mud. And we as observers, we perceive that high resistance as high mass.
Exactly. And if it interacts weakly, it's like wading through shallow water, low resistance, low mass.
And if a particle doesn't interact with the field at all, like a photon of light, it possesses zero mass and just rockets through the universe at the ultimate speed limit.
Right. And the philosophical takeaway from this physics lesson is profound. Mass is not a thing. It is an event.
An event, I like that.
It is a relational property. It emerges entirely from an interaction. Because without this invisible field providing resistance, electrons would just refuse to bind to nuclei.
Atoms could never form.
Exactly. Chemistry would instantly collapse, stars would never ignite, and biological life would be a physical impossibility. The raw ingredients of the universe would still be there, but the stable, organized structures of reality completely depend on this invisible, continuous interaction.
The notes offer a baking analogy that really clarifies this emergence for me.
Oh yeah, the bread analogy.
Yeah, you can pile flour, water, and yeast on your kitchen counter. Those are your tangible base ingredients, right? But simply piling them together doesn't give you a loaf of bread. You require the interaction of those physical ingredients with an invisible energy, the heat of the oven. The structure of the bread only emerges through that dynamic relationship.
And the author establishes this scientifically validated mechanism to prove a broader systemic point, which is that the most essential structural properties of reality are not inherent substances. They are emergent properties born from interactions with invisible fields.
And this is where I have to step in and offer some serious pushback.
I figured you might.
Because it is one thing to say a physical particle interacts with a physical quantum field to acquire the physical property of mass. We built a Large Hadron Collider to measure that. We have math for that.
We do.
But the framework takes this concept and applies it to the mind. It's a massive, frankly, dangerous leap in logic to say, well, the Higgs field gives particles mass, therefore a biological brain must interact with some mystical field to get the subjective experience of consciousness.
It's a huge jump.
You can't just slap a field onto a biological mystery we don't understand and call it a unified theory, you know.
Your skepticism is entirely warranted there, and the author actually leans into that exact friction. The text draws a very hard line here, acknowledging that we're leaving the domain of verifiable physics and entering the realm of speculative philosophy.
Okay, so they know they're making a leap.
Yes. The framework isn't claiming that a consciousness field is a measurable quantum phenomenon like electromagnetism. It is asking a systemic what if.
Right.
It's asking if the fundamental physical architecture of the universe relies on fields interacting with receivers to produce properties, what if our subjective experience operates on an analogous architectural principle?
So just as the Higgs field gives a particle the property of resistance, this hypothetical consciousness field gives an informational possibility the property of being experienced.
Notice the careful phrasing there. The framework explicitly states that this consciousness field does not generate your thoughts.
So it's not putting ideas in my head.
Right, it doesn't write the script of your inner monologue.
Meaning, just as the Higgs field doesn't create the quarks and electrons, it just gives them weight, the consciousness field doesn't create the idea of a blue elephant. It just provides the energetic presence that allows the idea of a blue elephant to be actively felt by an observer.
Exactly. It shifts the paradigm of the brain entirely. Mainstream neuroscience generally operates on a production model. You know, the brain is a biological factory.
Sensory data comes in, neurons fire.
Yeah, chemicals flood the synapses, and through some yet-to-be-explained miracle of complexity, the physical meat manufactures the subjective feeling of love or the taste of an apple. This framework abandons the factory model entirely. The brain is not a generator, it is a biological interface.
It's an antenna.
Yes.
It's a receiver, an interpreter, and a localized organizer of conscious experience. But it is fundamentally not the source.
Think about the device you use to access the internet. When you open a laptop and load a web page, the text and images of that web page are not physically stored inside the glass and plastic of your monitor.
Right, the screen is just a display.
The screen is simply a localized interface displaying information pulled from a vast, external, interconnected network.
This analogy is so sticky because we all understand what happens when the interface breaks. I mean, a few years ago, my home router completely fried after a lightning storm. My screens went black, my connection dropped.
But the internet didn't die.
Exactly. It would be incredibly arrogant of me to assume that because my laptop screen went dark, the entire global internet ceased to exist. All that happened was my localized biological, well, in this case, technological hardware, lost its ability to translate the signal.
And applying that logic to consciousness resolves so many philosophical paradoxes regarding brain damage or altered states.
How so?
Well, if a person suffers a traumatic brain injury and their personality radically shifts, the materialistic view argues that their self was altered because their brain is their self.
Right, the factory is broken, so the product is different.
But this framework argues that the universal information hasn't changed. The biological modem has been damaged, resulting in a corrupted download of the signal. The interface is distorting the reception.
Wow. I really want you to consider how often we mistake the medium for the source. We stare at a television and subconsciously feel like the news anchor is inside the box.
We real do.
We look at our own reflections and think the biological brain sitting inside our skull is the absolute origin point of our awareness. But if the brain is just tapping into this universal Wi-Fi of consciousness, then the physical reality we navigate every day is just the absolute bottom layer of a much larger invisible pipeline.
And the author maps this pipeline out chronologically. At the absolute top, you have a pure information layer, all potential knowledge.
Okay.
That filters down through the consciousness field, which illuminates it and allows it to be experienced. That connects to the brain, which acts as the biological tuner. And finally, you arrive at perception, the localized subjective reality that you and I actually see, touch, and navigate.
Which naturally begs the question, I mean, if my brains is just a biological web browser pulling down data, where are the web pages actually hosted?
Right, what's the server?
Yeah. If my neurons aren't generating my thoughts from scratch, what is the nature of the data being accessed?
That brings us to the third structural pillar of the architecture. Information as the fundamental bedrock of reality.
Okay.
The framework makes a seemingly simple observation that scales up to a massive philosophical claim. Physical matter degrades and changes states. Energy transfers and dissipates.
Entropy, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
But information possesses a unique, transcendent ability to persist entirely independent of its physical medium.
The notes offer a brilliant illustration using literature here. Take the story of Hamlet.
Oh, this is a great example.
Right. That story is pure information. You can print it on paper and find it in a book. You can store it as a digital PDF on a hard drive. You can encode it into radio waves and broadcast it. You can perform it live on a wooden stage. You can even translate the English into Mandarin.
The physical medium hosting the information changes completely every single time.
But the underlying structural relationships of the information, the betrayal, the tragedy, the sequence of events, those remain perfectly preserved and intact.
And by extending that logic, the framework posits that information isn't merely a descriptive layer we paste on top of the physical universe to make sense of it. Information is the foundational substrate.
It's the base code.
Exactly. And to visualize this, the author resurrects a concept from ancient metaphysical traditions, but strips away the mystical aesthetics, the Akashic records.
I have to admit, when I initially read the words Akashic records, I immediately pictured some glowing, dusty library floating on a cloud with a bearded wizard guarding the scrolls.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly esoteric.
It really does.
But the author anticipates that reaction and aggressively grounds the concept in systems theory. Forget the floating scrolls. Treat the Akashic records purely as a metaphysical conceptual model for an infinite information archive.
Like a giant database.
Yes. Imagine a repository containing every conceivable point of data, every historical event that has ever occurred, every mathematical theorem waiting to be discovered,
Every subjective thought any human has ever had.
and every potential branching future. It all exists simultaneously as pure informational potential within this archive.
But the crucial defining characteristic of this library is that it is entirely inert. The library doesn't think.
Right.
It doesn't judge. It isn't a conscious entity analyzing its own books. It is simply an inactive, perfect repository of all potential.
And distinguishing the inert nature of the library forces the framework to introduce a critical separation between two concepts that modern philosophy often lumps together: the awareness plane and the consciousness field.
This was the moment the whole architecture really clicked for me. Because if this infinite repository of every thought and mathematical proof exists right now, why aren't we constantly overwhelmed?
Why isn't our interface crashing?
Exactly. Why isn't my brain exploding from the simultaneous realization of every star's atomic weight and, I don't know, the emotional trauma of every person on Earth?
The protection mechanism is your awareness plane. If the Akashic records represent the infinite library, your awareness plane is your highly specific, highly restricted library membership card.
Okay, so I don't get access to the whole building.
Millions of volumes exist on the shelves, but your biological and structural membership only grants you access to a tiny fraction of the aisles, and you can only pull down a few books at any given time. Your awareness acts as a localized filter.
And the consciousness field, in this analogy, is the sunlight pouring through the skylights of the library.
Perfect way to picture it.
Because the sunlight didn't write the books. The sunlight doesn't select which book you pull off the shelf. It simply provides the illumination necessary for the words on the page to be translated into an experience.
The synergy of the three is elegant. The information already exists as potential. Your awareness plane selects a microscopic fraction of it, and the consciousness field illuminates that selection, transforming potential data into a lived, subjective experience.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. When we visualize a library, we typically default to an alphabetical filing system, right?
Like the Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah, fiction in one aisle, nonfiction in another, neatly siloed into isolated categories. But the author argues that treating universal information like a filing cabinet fundamentally misunderstands how knowledge works. The archive is not a list, it is a multidimensional knowledge graph.
What's fascinating here is that mapping universal knowledge to graph theory is where the framework seamlessly blends ancient metaphysics with modern systems engineering.
Because in a knowledge graph, data isn't stored in isolated rows and columns.
It is stored as nodes, and those nodes are defined entirely by their relationships and connections to other nodes.
The nodes map out a microcosm of this graph. Imagine a node labeled identity. That node doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is structurally linked to a node called family.
And the family node branches out to parents and generational history.
Right, but your identity node is also linked to creativity, and creativity is heavily linked to mathematics, which is linked to architecture, which is linked to musical composition. It's this infinitely complex, sprawling web of relational data.
And because the entire archive is relational, navigating it yields profound, seemingly spontaneous connections. I mean, have you ever spent months deeply studying a subject that seems incredibly niche, say, the structural engineering of suspension bridges, and suddenly you find that your understanding of interpersonal boundaries in your relationships has profoundly shifted?
Yes, or you study classical music theory and suddenly grasp a concept in physics.
Exactly.
It's because I didn't just drop a new isolated fact into a filing cabinet in my brain. I strengthened a node in the graph, and the vibrational energy of that new understanding traveled down the relational web and organically illuminated a connected node.
Which radically redefines the act of learning. We often speak of learning as downloading information, treating our brains like hard drives. But the framework argues that awareness doesn't download anything, awareness navigates.
It's like exploring an immense ancient city. The city is already fully constructed.
The boulevards, the alleyways, the skyscrapers.
The subterranean tunnels, yeah, they already exist. But your specific journey through that city, the cafe you decide to enter, the dead-end alley you get lost in, that route is entirely unique to your specific awareness plane.
To taking the city analogy a step further, the author addresses a crucial logistical problem. Not every building in a city is open to the public.
Right, some doors are locked.
The framework introduces a brilliant application of information security protocols applied to universal knowledge. To prevent our localized interfaces from accessing data they aren't equipped to handle, the universe employs layers of security.
It maps perfectly to corporate network security. You have data, encryption, authentication, and authorization.
Consider how a biological brain authenticates itself against a universal consciousness field. First, the data exists in the graph, but it is crypted.
Right.
The author refers to this as the Akashic language, which isn't a language of words, but of pure informational relationships and resonance.
Then comes authentication and authorization. And this is vital, because possessing information is fundamentally different from understanding it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I can hand an 8-year-old child a complex textbook on quantum field theory written in a language they don't speak. They physically possess the data, but they don't possess the structural authorization to decode it.
Authorization in this framework isn't a password you type in. It is a state of structural being. You cannot access a profound, universally true insight about unconditional love or extreme sacrifice if your awareness plane hasn't built the philosophical and emotional hardware required to sustain that truth.
The universe essentially says the data is here, but your current structural architecture does not have the clearance to decrypt it. You haven't earned the structural capacity.
Which brings us to the absolute crux of this deep dive, the hook we started the show with.
Right. Why are we here?
We have mapped out this magnificent architecture. We have an infinite, pristine library of all possible knowledge. We have a consciousness field illuminating it. We have an awareness plane navigating a multidimensional web.
If all of this is true, if every single outcome, every mathematical proof, and every piece of profound wisdom already exists in this perfect, transcendent archive, why are we down here in the mud?
Why do we have to deal with gravity and heartbreak and taxes and disease and failure? If the universe is a perfect archive, why does it demand our physical suffering?
Yeah.
This is where the framework introduces its second version, pivoting from the structure of knowledge to the purpose of life. It introduces what it calls the meaning engine.
This specific concept completely rewired how I view my own daily frustrations, because the author argues that physical life is absolutely not about creating new universal information.
The universe doesn't need you to invent a new concept.
Right, the archive is full. Physical life exists to transform abstract potential into lived, integrated meaning.
It operates on a continuous learning loop comprised of 3 distinct stages: potential, experience, and integration. The information exists in the Akashic records as pure, abstract potential.
No.
Physical life forces us to pull that information down and embody it through experience. And that visceral experience causes integration. It structurally alters how that information is organized within our localized awareness plane.
The notes offer a phenomenal thought experiment for this. Imagine a 7-year-old child and a 60-year-old retired quantum physicist.
A classic comparison.
They are both sitting in a room reading the exact same paragraph in a physics textbook. The physical words on the page are identical. The raw data being absorbed by their retinas is identical.
But the understanding of that data is astronomically different.
Exactly. The book didn't change. The physical data didn't change. The transformation occurred entirely within the structural architecture of the reader.
The raw data was processed through 2 completely different awareness planes. And what is the mechanism that facilitates that processing? What is the catalyst that turns abstract data into integrated wisdom?
The physical universe itself.
In version 2 of this framework, the physical universe is no longer viewed as a neutral, passive stage where events simply happen. It is an active, aggressive mechanism. It is the meaning engine.
So what does this all mean? What does an engine actually do? An engine utilizes friction, pressure, combustion, and resistance to generate forward power. The notes state that the physical universe provides 4 essential elements: resistance, uncertainty, relationships, and consequences.
And without those 4 points of friction, information remains permanently abstract.
Right.
Consider a virtue like courage. You can read thousands of books analyzing courage. You can memorize historical accounts of bravery. You can understand the psychological definition perfectly. But in the archive, it remains abstract data.
It's just a word.
It is only when the physical universe provides intense resistance, a moment of genuine physical danger, or a scenario where speaking the truth might cost you your career or your reputation, that the abstract data of courage is forced through the crucible of physical experience.
The universe's resistance provides the context, and context is the only thing that gives birth to meaning.
The author provides a beautiful, melancholy example to illustrate context. Imagine 2 people sitting side by side on a wooden bench, looking out over the ocean, watching the exact same sunset.
A single, objective physical event.
Right. The first person is a meteorologist. They look at the horizon and process the atmospheric scattering, the refraction of light through moisture particulates.
Just the data.
Just the data. The second person is sitting right next to them, watching the exact same photons hit their eyes, but they are experiencing a wave of profound grief over a recently lost loved one, suddenly pierced by a deeply unexpected feeling of hope.
The external event is perfectly identical. The physical data is the same, but the meaning generated by the engine of their lives is entirely different.
And crucially, that generated meaning doesn't just evaporate when the sun goes down. It permanently transforms the observer.
It changes their map.
Exactly. The grief and the hope fundamentally rewrite the architecture of that person's awareness plane, which means the next morning when they wake up and interact with the world, they are navigating the city of universal information using a completely upgraded map.
The author condenses this massive dynamic loop into one single guiding principle, and it is the heartbeat of this entire framework. Reality is encountered through experience. Experience becomes meaning. Meaning transforms awareness. Transformed awareness changes how reality is encountered.
It is an endless, self-sustaining feedback loop of evolution. And what makes version 2 philosophically satisfying is that it resolves the problem of the perfect archive.
Right, the library doesn't need to change.
The Akashic library doesn't need to change or grow. The books remain perfectly intact. But humanity's relationship to the library is constantly deepening, driven relentlessly forward by the friction of physical experience.
I want you to think about a highly specific moment in your own life. Think about a piece of cliché advice that a parent or a teacher gave you when you were 15.
We all have one.
Right. Maybe it was about trust or money or relationships. You heard the words. You could repeat the sentence back to them. You possessed the data, but you didn't understand it.
The authorization wasn't there yet.
Exactly. And then, 10 years later, You made a catastrophic mistake, you hit a brick wall, your heart got broken, and you suffered a real consequence. And suddenly, standing in the wreckage, that cliché piece of advice clicked with staggering clarity.
Because you didn't learn a new fact. The data didn't change.
You simply gained the structural authorization to integrate an old fact. That is the meaning engine operating at peak efficiency. That is the friction of the physical universe upgrading your software.
That upgrade, that hard-won transformation of your awareness, does not exist in isolation. The framework asserts that the meaning generated by an individual does not simply reset to zero when they pass away.
It ripples outward.
It structurally affects the network of people they are connected to. This brings us to Section 5 of the architecture, which introduces the mechanics of resonance and the structural legacy of our ancestors.
Okay, let's tackle resonance first. Earlier, we mentioned the idea of one person's awareness plane interacting with another's.
And the author very deliberately avoids terms like mind reading or telepathy.
Yeah, because those carry unhelpful sci-fi baggage. Instead, they borrow a concept from acoustic physics resonance.
Imagine two tuning forks calibrated to vibrate at the exact same frequency. If you strike the first fork so it begins to ring, and then you bring it into close proximity with the second, completely untouched tuning fork, the second one will spontaneously begin to vibrate and hum.
The acoustic energy transfers through the field between them because their physical structures are aligned to accept that specific frequency.
Exactly. And the framework suggests that if consciousness operates as a universal field, and our individual awareness planes possess unique vibrational signatures or architectural structures, then two people who are deeply historically connected, say siblings or a couple married for 50 years, can structurally align.
Their awareness systems synchronize to the same frequency.
This synchronization creates a temporary informational overlap in the knowledge graph. It provides a structural, architectural explanation for profound empathy, or those moments of deep intuition where you know exactly what your partner is feeling without a single physical cue or spoken word.
You are literally resonating within the same informational node.
Yes.
But the framework doesn't stop at living relationships.
Yeah.
It takes this concept of shared informational architecture and stretches it vertically across time, looking at the generational influence of our ancestors.
Right, our lineage.
We already accept biological inheritance as scientific fact. We know we inherit physical traits, genetic predispositions, and there is growing evidence for epigenetic markers passing down the physical echoes of ancestral trauma. We also inherit culture, language, and family traditions.
The architecture of awareness proposes a deeper metaphysical layer of inheritance. If we connect this to the bigger picture, every single generation before you went through the meaning engine.
They experienced the friction.
Your great-grandparents survived wars, endured famines, celebrated incredible loves, and suffered bitter betrayals. They processed that immense friction, generated meaning, and permanently transformed the architecture of their awareness planes.
And the author suggests that these accumulated crystallized patterns of meaning actually form the starting structural blueprint for the next generation.
Now, the notes clarify that this is not a literal transfer of episodic memory.
Right, you don't wake up on a Tuesday with a vivid first-person memory of your great-grandfather churning butter or fighting in a trench.
Precisely. It is entirely structural. Return to the analogy of awareness as a vast city we must navigate. Your ancestors spent their entire lives paving certain philosophical roads, building specific bridges between concepts like trust and survival, and perhaps erecting massive defensive walls around traumatic neighborhoods in the knowledge graph.
So when you are born into that lineage, you inherit the layout of that city. You inherit the default pathways of meaning.
Which introduces an incredibly practical tool in the notes that I did not expect to find in a philosophical framework.
Oh, the method of loci.
Yes. The author argues that because awareness is architectural, we can consciously navigate and map it using a technique called the method of loci, or the memory palace.
It's a brilliant application. The method of loci is an ancient mnemonic strategy where you visualize a physical space, a house, a castle, a familiar street, and you mentally place information in specific rooms.
The framework argues this works so effectively because our awareness is spatial and architectural.
The note suggests combining this spatial visualization with hierarchical indexing. So if I realize I have an inherited default pathway that links financial security directly to panic a road my ancestors paved during the Great Depression, I can consciously map that out.
You can locate it.
I can assign it a location in my mental architecture, index it, and begin the deliberate work of paving a new road.
And that deliberate work brings us right to the classic philosophical trap.
Which is?
Well, if your ancestors spent centuries building the structural layout of your awareness plane, if they set your exact starting coordinates and default pathways in this vast universal city, how much genuine free will do you actually possess? Are you an autonomous agent, or are you just a tourist blindly walking down the roads your grandparents paved?
And I push back on determinism heavily here, because if the meaning engine is supposed to generate new meaning, it requires choice. If I have no choice, the engine is just running on a track.
The framework resolves this tension by stating that while your starting coordinates and initial pathways are inherited, the meaning engine of your own life provides the friction necessary to break ground on new construction.
So I can change the city.
You are born a resident of the city, but through the crucible of your own unique experiences and choices, you become the new architect. You inherit a legacy, but you possess the agency to renovate it before passing the updated blueprint to the next generation.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second and look at the breathtaking scale of what we've mapped. We have a universal, multidimensional library of all information.
Right.
We have a continuous consciousness field illuminating it. We have physical reality acting as a massive frictional meaning engine to turn abstract data into integrated wisdom. We have generations passing down the structural blueprints of that wisdom. It is an absolute masterpiece of systemic design.
It really is beautifully constructed.
But anytime you encounter a system this perfect, this vast, and this intricately interconnected, it begs the ultimate inescapable question: who or what built the library?
Who sustains the field? Who engineered the meaning engine?
Exactly.
This brings us to the final, sweeping evolution of the source material version 3. In version 3, the author explicitly integrates the concept of the transcendent. Specifically, they introduce God, the creator, aligning the framework with classical monotheistic theology, drawing on the traditions of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism.
Before we dive into the mechanics of this, I want to pause and make our stance crystal clear to you, the listener.
Very important point here.
Regardless of your personal belief system, whether you are deeply devout, strictly atheist, or navigating the space in between, we are approaching version 3 strictly as an architectural and philosophical model. We are not proselytizing, and we are not taking theological sides. We are analyzing how the author attempts to resolve the final, gaping conceptual holes in their own system.
And a philosophical resolution they offer is remarkably elegant. The greatest risk when a philosopher tries to merge classical theology with a highly structured, systemic flowchart is that they end up putting God in a box.
Making God just another piece of the machine.
Exactly. They reduce the creator to a component. You end up with a diagram that says, here's the physical universe, here's the quantum layer, here's the information layer. And sitting right at the very top, operating as the highest gear in the machine, is God.
Which fundamentally violates the core premise of classical monotheism. In those traditions, God cannot be a component of the system. God cannot be a part of reality subject to its rules.
Therefore, version 3 radically redefines the architecture. God is not the top layer of the flowchart. God is completely transcendent.
So outside the system.
Yes, God is the eternal, uncaused source of existence itself. The source of absolute truth, perfect wisdom, infinite love, flawless justice, and the sheer, incomprehensible creative power that spun the entire architecture into being. The framework emphasizes a vital distinction here. Everything in the system, from the Akashic records down to the Higgs field, depends entirely and continuously on God. God depends on absolutely nothing.
So the entire massive flowchart we spent the last hour building is suspended from and actively sustained by this transcendent source. But introducing this requires a massive retcon of the Akashic records, right? Because in section 3, we were treating this universal library as an independent, standalone metaphysical entity.
Yes, and the author notes that to remain logically coherent with, for example, Islamic theology, specifically Tawhid, the absolute oneness of God, you cannot have an eternal, infinite library existing alongside the creator.
Because that implies two eternal, independent sources.
Thus, the universal information layer is redefined. It is no longer an independent metaphysical object. The Akashic records become a conceptual representation of all created knowledge, held flawlessly within the ultimate perfect knowledge of the creator.
The library doesn't just exist out there. It belongs to and is sustained by the mind of the architect.
Exactly. This raises an important question, though, regarding the implications of that for how humanity interacts with truth. Because if the creator is the source of perfect objective truth, why is human history defined by profound confusion, conflict, and misunderstanding?
The framework resolves this by drawing a sharp architectural line between objective guidance and subjective reception.
And this is fascinating.
I found this specific mechanism incredibly compelling, even if you strip away the theology and apply it just to human communication. The idea is that objective guidance, the absolute core truth of the universe, the moral order, the correct way to navigate the knowledge graph, is constant. It is always broadcasting at maximum strength.
But our subjective reception, our biological brains, our inherited trauma-paved awareness planes, our personal biases, that reception is wildly flawed.
It's like trying to tune into a crystal clear 4K digital satellite broadcast using a busted television from 1985 with a bent coat hanger wrapped in tinfoil for an antenna.
That is the perfect analogy.
The original signal is flawless. The objective truth is perfect. But the localized receiver is struggling to decode it, resulting in static, distortion, and misinterpretation.
But here is the genius of the framework. That struggle, that static, is the entire point. Because if we recall Section 4, the physical universe is a meaning engine. If the Creator designed us with perfect reception, if we instantly and effortlessly understood all universal truths the moment we were born, there would be zero friction.
There would be no learning loop.
We would bypass the meaning engine entirely. We would simply be passive hard drives storing divine data, incapable of growth.
So version 3 gives us the final, complete loop of the human journey.
How does it lay it out?
It operates like this. We enter physical existence with a flawed receiver. We experience the relentless friction of reality. We exercise free choice, which is absolutely vital because without the capacity to choose poorly, there are no moral consequences and no context.
Right.
We learn through those painful consequences in relationships. We develop character, resilience, and wisdom. This process structurally expands our awareness plane, and ultimately that expanded awareness moves us toward a deeper, more profound alignment with truth, goodness, love, and the creator of the system itself.
It fundamentally shifts the entire purpose of human life. Life is no longer framed as a temporary school where the goal is simply to acquire as much correct information as possible before the final bell rings.
Life is a crucible.
It is a forge designed to completely transform your structural architecture. You aren't supposed to just memorize the books in the universal library. You are supposed to be profoundly shaped by the resistance of trying to read them in the dark.
I have to say, looking at the entire blueprint laid out from top to bottom, it is breathtaking.
It really is an achievement in systemic thought.
Even if you choose to view it purely as a metaphorical poem about human existence, seeing the universe not as cold, random chaos, but as a customized engine, perfectly designed to pull us toward truth and love through the friction of our own daily experience, it is just a profoundly beautiful way to frame the struggle of being human.
It restores immense dignity to the struggle. Your pain, your confusion, your slow and agonizing learning process. It isn't a glitch in the universe. It is the universe. It is the meaning engine running exactly as it was designed to run.
So, as we wrap up this incredibly ambitious deep dive, I want to leave you with a summary of the core loop that you are actively living right now, today. Remember the guiding principle. Reality is encountered through experience. That physical experience, filtered through the unique architecture of your life, becomes meaning.
That meaning fundamentally transforms your structural awareness.
And that newly transformed awareness changes exactly how you will encounter reality tomorrow. You are a living, breathing, vital component of the universe's meaning engine.
It has been a fascinating journey through these notes. We've traveled from the mathematical certainty of particle mass in the Higgs field to the absolute frontier of metaphysical purpose.
But before we completely sign off, I want to leave you, our listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over. Something that wasn't explicitly mentioned in the source material, but builds directly on this concept of the meaning engine.
Oh, I like where this is going.
The framework states very clearly that the physical universe must provide resistance, uncertainty, and consequences to turn abstract data into actual wisdom. Friction is the mandatory fuel for expanding our awareness.
Without the friction, the engine stalls.
So here's the question you need to ask yourself. What happens to human consciousness in our rapidly advancing modern world? We are currently utilizing technology to systematically hunt down and eliminate every possible point of resistance, struggle, and uncertainty from our daily lives.
We really are.
We rely on algorithms that perfectly predict what we want to watch so we never have to search. We use GPS that prevents us from ever getting lost or having to ask a stranger for directions. We engineer conveniences that ensure we never have to wait, wonder, or sit in silence.
All the friction is gone.
If friction is the necessary fuel for the meaning engine, Are we technologically engineering a world that is at severe risk of stalling our own awareness? By smoothing out all the resistance, are we unintentionally dismantling the very engine we need to grow?
That is a deeply unsettling yet vital question to take into the meaning engine of your own life this week.
Thank you so much for coming on this deep dive with us. We threw some incredibly heavy, sprawling concepts at you today, from quantum fields to infinite libraries to the structural architecture of the soul, but you stuck with it. Keep exploring your own awareness map, keep questioning the interface, and embrace the friction. We will see you next time.